My name is Aren Spencer, and this is my story.
I would love you to take me back to where it all started. Like, what made you first fall in love with athletics?
So, growing up in primary school, I played a lot of sports. So, I grew up playing football. Tennis was actually my main sport. I represented the country in tennis a couple of times when I was younger. So obviously when you get into secondary school, track and field is taken a lot more seriously. Everybody runs at some point, so I kind of found my talent that way. And funny enough, I wanted to take it a little more seriously because I wanted to get faster for tennis. And through training to get faster, I realized that I can be competitive on a national level. And it was always my goal going into secondary school just to make the BSAT team. I wanted to make the BSAT team because I felt like that was just such a huge deal. And in my first year, I ended up making the BSAT team. And not only making it, I ended up winning a couple events. I won the 400 meters and I won the long jump. And it was through that BSAT experience, I think 2015. It was through that experience that I realized that I have a talent in the sport and I could take it, to a national and international level, and I could potentially pay for my school. So that was definitely my motivation. And since then, it's been a ride, and I'm happy with how far I've taken it so far.
What would you say was your toughest obstacle in the journey so far? One that goes beyond what people in the stands see.
I can think of a couple, honestly, but I think it's definitely going into college. My first couple years in college was difficult. Dealing with injuries. I went into college with super high expectations for myself, and I knew that my coaches and other personnel had expectations of me as well. So I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I dealt with some injuries and performances that I knew that I was capable of a lot more. So battling that and trying to navigate through that, and I leaned on my support system. I think that helped me a lot. Leaned on all the resources that Baylor provided, and obviously, my parents are only a call away. I gotta big up my parents because they helped me through a lot of difficult times, and just sticking it out and using my resources to my advantage, I ended up having a breakthrough later on into my collegiate career, and I'm just blessed that I was able to stick it through and see through the course.
You spoke about moving from Barbados then to moving overseas to college, but how would you compare the jump from competing in Barbados to then competing in the NCAAs?
Well, competing in the NCAA is very difficult, especially in the conference that I'm in. You see some of the best athletes in the world competing in college, you know what I mean? Not saying that the level in Barbados is not high, because it is, especially now, but moving to college is a whole different ball game, You're competing against Olympians, people that eventually will make a living off of the sport. So kind of adjusting to that, I was happy to have that exposure to that level of competition because it has helped me as I transition to post-collegiate, because I want to compete professionally. I want to end up going to the Olympics. So it was a big stepping stone in my development, moving to college and, competing at the NCAA level.
While many athletes tend to focus on their own careers and achievements, you took a different path by creating the Barbados Grand Prix. What inspired you to create something that is much bigger than yourself?
To be honest, this all came about because I was bored. I was bored one day, and the main motivation behind the whole thing is the fact that collegiate athletes, because I was in it, don't get the level of exposure that they deserve. I felt as though in post-collegiate or post-carifta, people forget about you unless you're doing incredible things like Shade Williams. So the main motivation was just to bring exposure to collegiate athletes, and obviously giving them a platform where they can compete against the best of the best. And to be honest, the inspiration behind it was, I don't watch cricket that often, but when the BIM 10 cricket tournament was going on, I know that Nate Sports Talk was covering that a lot. He did a lot of coverage on that, and I followed that because I felt that his coverage was so good, and I followed it, and I thought it was so cool that athletes are drafted, cricketers are drafted to different teams. I love that concept, and I told myself, why can't we have a concept like that in track and field? It's never been done before. I don't know why it's never been done before, but I felt like I could be the first, and I felt that I could create history that way. So immediately I just spoke to my dad, and every time I tell a story like this, I have to big up my dad because he was so instrumental in this journey. You know, he heard the vision one time and immediately got on it, put everything in place for me to achieve this enormous event, you know. So to answer your question, the real inspiration was just to give Barbadian athletes, especially that are on the collegiate level, a platform that they can showcase their talents in front of a huge home crowd. That was always big for me.
So for the future, what more can we expect from Aren Spencer as it relates to the continued growth of the Barbados Grand Prix and even the development of track and field in Barbados?
Yeah, that's my entire mission, to be honest. We have so much untapped potential here in Barbados, and I just want to do my part to contribute to that as much as possible, you know. And that was the motivation. That's really the motivation behind anything I do within the scope of sports. I know that, you know what I mean, I was at a place where I wasn't performing as well as I wanted to, but I was so hungry to have an impact that I felt like I could create an impact outside of just performing, outside of just, you know, winning races. So that was huge for me, and I think that, to answer your question, I think that the Barbados Grand Prix can become a cornerstone event within the scope of not only track and field but sports, not only in the Caribbean but around the world. I think that it has potential to be one of the greatest events, and we work pretty much, it just finished and we almost starting, you know, to plan for next year. So we work tirelessly to create an ecosystem in Barbados where sports can be taken a little bit more seriously, I think. And as I said, that's my mission, that's my entire goal, and you know, everything I do is surrounded around that motivation. My name is Aren Spencer, and that was my story.
I've been like that.